We went to the South Orkney Islands, to Cygney Island. Now the whalers had had some of their buildings there, and we built our new all-plastic research station right next door to this. Now this plastic building had been specially designed with all sorts of special insulation to keep the people warm through the cold winter. And you'd be surprised to know that the insulation was so effective that they had to open all the windows in the middle of winter to let some fresh air in. It got so hot inside. Now, the South Orkney Islands are very, very interesting because the Scottish National Antarctic Expedition went here in 1902 to 4. And they were all people from Scotland. But this is what Laurie Island looks like. That's where they went. Now quite often we have trouble with pack ice here because you see the pack ice moves around the Weddell Sea in a clockwise direction, and it goes out the top straight to the South Orkney Islands. And so we have to wait about for the pack ice to go so we can get people off. Today, of course, with helicopters it's easy. And this is a part of the South Orkney Islands too. You see, this is a front, the weather front coming through. And that's what it looks like in the late evening, all these jagged rocks. You see, nobody lives there, do they? Now I'm going to take you to the South Shetland Islands. Now the South Shetland Islands were seen first of all by a person called William Smith in 1819. Lots of glaciers, and of course it's quite far north. It's north of the Antarctic Circle, and all these rocks here are volcanic ashes. Now these ashes are quite important because in those ashes there are preserved fossil plants, beech leaves, monkey puzzle tree branches, you know. So the climate 30 million years ago must have been much milder than it is today for all these trees that now grow in South America to have grown here. And it's very unusual for a fossil to be so well preserved in volcanic ashes. Now this is a volcanic spine cutting right through the glacier. And of course the whalers used to go to the South Shetland Islands, and here are some of the vertebrae from the whales. That's a water boat that they used to use. A lot of huts have been built there one time and another. Of course they're left there just in case somebody gets into trouble. And now I want to go to one particular island. This now is Deception Island. Deception Island is almost circular in outline, but it has in the center of it a most perfect harbor which has an entrance at the southeastern side. Now during the war, the German raiders sheltered at Deception Island. And this is in fact a volcano, and the center of the volcano has collapsed. It's called a collapsed caldera. And this pillar, Pete's Pillar as it's called, I don't know who Pete was, but a lot of boats, whaling boats, have crashed into it at one time and another, is right in the entranceway to the harbor. Now all around the inside of this harbor there are steam jets because it's volcanic. And so you can go and swim here. Today the tourists go there and they go and swim in the hot waters. the last eruption that took place here was in 1970. There was also one in 1969 and one in 1967. But there wasn't any lava. It was all ash. And you can see the ash on top of the buildings here. Now, because of the great heat that was generated, there were a lot of mud flows. And they swept straight down off the hillsides, through buildings that were there. They went straight through the old whalers' cemetery and washed it out to sea. It was sad. But Deception Island is a wonderful place. Now, these penguins live there. These are called chin strap penguins. You can see the little black strap underneath them. Well, they're tiny. They're only about that big. And these penguins tread about in the hot waters around the hot springs. Now, the people who were studying them thought something very odd was going on because they got blisters on their feet. And they called this a strange disease called puffinosis. But later somebody showed them that they were just blisters through them standing in the boiling water, which was quite a different problem altogether. It wasn't a virus disease. Now, while I'm talking about these, the first cousins of these chinstrap penguins are the Adie penguins. They're also small like that. Some of the rookeries have got millions of penguins in them. And when the spring comes on, all these penguins come back always to the same rookery and always to the same nesting site. And you see them walking about. They go and feed and they come back and they walk about and they pick up pebbles because they make their nests out of pebbles because there's no grass or trees or anything like that for views. And they pick up these pebbles and make them into their nests. And the way it all works is they'll pick up a pebble and that they put it down in front of another bird, and the other bird takes no notice. They go on and put it down in front of another one. And eventually one of them will pick up the pebble. Now that means that that was the mate of that penguin from last year and the year before and the year before and the year before that. And then they get together and they build a nest out of stones. And, you know, when you're walking about in one of the rookeries, it's very embarrassing because, you know, these penguins keep coming up to you and putting a pebble down in front of your feet. Now, what do? You just study them. You just look at them like that. But it's very interesting. Now, we did an experiment with these Adie penguins, not the chinstraps, the Adie penguins. We made pebbles of all different colors, red ones and blue ones and green ones and yellow ones, and we put them at one end of the rookery and we watched, and these penguins were stealing the pebbles out of the nest next to them, and then while they had their backs turned, the penguin over here would steal his like this. So eventually all of the blue pebbles moved from that end of the rookery to that end. Now nobody had ever recorded this before. They just thought that these penguins picked up pebbles, but they also thought they were colorblind, but they're not. They can see. So that was a very interesting little thing. Now I want to take you to the most exciting part of the Antarctic Peninsula. This is Hope Bay. Now, I spent the whole of 1947 here. This is called Mount Flora, and that's called Depot Glacier, and this is called Mount Taylor. Now, Mount Flora is very special indeed, because here, on these buttresses, you can go and collect fossil ferns which are as big as this, and they're all preserved in iron parietes. They're all golden in color. And of course today you can't go and just collect things like that because they're all preserved. It's a special conservation area. Now this here is where the old British base was. That got sadly burnt down at one point, and they built another one. I must tell you that all these British bases are very austere. You know, you have the bare minimum of things. But right next door to the British base, the Argentines came and built a base as well. They had everything. They had washing machines and spin dryers and tumble dryers. And you know, they even went to the lengths of bringing families from Argentina down here. They were complete families, husbands and wives and children, and they brought 5 school teachers down here. They said they had a school here. And they literally had everything there. But you know, I have a lot of Argentine friends, and we often joke about the Argentines. Now, I said this the other day, and an Argentine came up to me and talked to me about it. But the Argentines seem to be able to play their guitars rather better than they can do science. They love playing their guitars, and they have a wonderful time. Now, in 1901 to 3, the Swedes had an expedition down here. And they lived, well, the main hut was over the hill, but a group of them lived here in just 4 stone walls with a tarpaulin over it, lived here for 8 months. And they did some wonderful work which has never been bettered to this day. Now, the first part of Antarctica to be discovered, Mount Bransfield. And this is what it looks like from the ship. Is that better? That's better. Mount Bransfield, high cliffs, 100 feet high all the way around it. Daphne, could you just focus it a bit, please? I've just touched this by accident. Now, all the way down this west coast of the Antarctic Peninsula, their huts have been built. The other way. Yeah. Can you see that now? Yeah. Huts have been built, and this has been to reinforce sovereignty claims that have been made by different countries. Argentine, Chilean huts, British, Russian, you name it, they are there. But this is what it looks like on the west coast of the Antarctic Peninsula. These huts are all prefabricated. They are tied to the ground with cables because the winds are so high. They can reach the winds can reach a speed of 120 miles an hour, not kilometers an hour. And every year these huts are checked to make sure that all the provisions there are in good working order. Now, that particular hut had to be abandoned because suddenly, after the hut had been built, there came a whole lot of penguins. Now, these are Gen 2 penguins, also small penguins. Here, big rookery of them. Now, I can't give you the right smells. I should carry an aerosol to give you the right smells. But the smell is awful. Here, and of course, all the snow is contaminated by the droppings of these penguins, and so they shut the base down. But before they shut it down, we had a chance of seeing some of the chicks. These are the Gen 2 penguin chicks. You just see his pink pink beak and his pink feet. And of course they always stand in a water puddle. Here, ice cliffs prevent people from getting onto the rocks themselves. All the way down the coast it's like this. But it's wonderful for the tourists. But I must tell you now that you have blizzards in the Antarctic 3 or 4 days out of 5. So it's very seldom that you have the opportunity of taking pictures like these, because there isn't any lovely blue sky. This is a lovely little harbour on the west coast. And of course here is one of the cormorant rookeries. Now these cormorants also continually go back to the same nesting site every year. And they also sit on pillars, rather like the wandering albatrosses. Now some of these nests are as old as 10,000 or 15,000 years. All right? Now, you've heard all about global warming. Now, when I first went down this coast in 1946, here was an island, and on top of the island was an ice cap. And when I went back 20 years later, the ice cap had melted completely. Gone. And as long ago as 1960, we were predicting that there was some form of global warming taking place. But this is at a place called the Argentine Islands, and this is where they discovered, first of all, the hole in the ozone layer, at here. There is the geophysical laboratory where all this work was done. Those are the mountains inland in the Antarctic Peninsula. You see, it's a wonderful place to see, just to travel down this coast in the ship. And the reflections that you get are absolutely fantastic, because on the top of the sea there is a thin, thin layer of ice which acts like a mirror. Just look at these reflections. It's so seldom that you get a chance of really seeing the mountain ranges and so on.
Is it quiet like you've never experienced quiet before?
If you're there all by yourself, there is no pin to drop.
Yes.
It is quiet, quiet. Somebody once said to me, in the Antarctic it is audibly quiet. Now, I spent the whole of 1948 and 49 here at a place called Stonington Island. That's Northeast Glacier behind. And
Imagine living in a place like that for 2 years. That's where you live. Look at it. Imagine doing that.
yes.
Every day watching the video.
Well, the thing is this: if you have work to do all the time, you don't realize the time is passing so fast. Here we're 11 of us lived together in this hut for 27 months without seeing anybody else. We didn't use money, but we had only one argument. It was a hot argument. Do you know what it was about? It was about whether you put milk in your tea first or second. Some people said you put milk in first, and some people said second. So you know how we decided on this. We resolved the problem. We put the milk jug there and the teapot there, and people helped themselves so they could do what they wanted to. But all of us who spent all that time together have remained friends for a long, long time. Sorry, are you asking a question?
Did you
I want to know that one too.
First.
Oh, I agree. I would have been.
Okay, well now we're nearly at an end, and I want to show you one of these mountains in the height of a blizzard. Shush, 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 shush. This is Mount Nemesis. Now, that hut that I showed you earlier was burnt down and was replaced by another one. And then further away, there was another hut built at a place called Rothera. Now today, all the scientists who work in the field are flown into the field. Perhaps 600-800 miles. Now when we were working there way back before 1950, we had to sledge with dogs 600 or 800 miles to get to where we wanted to work, and then do our work and then come back again. In other words, you have to know all about sledging and so on, how to survive, because if you don't survive, you don't do any research work. And then once you've done your research work, you've got to come back and you've got to write it up so that other people can see what work you've actually done. Now I've tried to tell you about a lot of things that maybe you've read about already, but probably there's some things that you haven't read about. But you know, what you really want to do is to start saving up now so that you can go down to the Antarctic and see all the sorts of things that you've been looking at today. But you know, one of the things that we learned more about than anything else, living in small groups, I'll answer you in a minute, living in small groups, is that you have to be considerate. You have to think about other people's feelings. You have to think twice before you say anything rude. Because remember, you've got to live with those people for a long time. And really, if you're going to be in a place like the Antarctic, you've got to try and appreciate what other people are doing all the time. And unfortunately, we've had to come to an end right there. So now I hope you'll... Have they handed in their projects yet?
They're still working on it.
You're working on it?
Yeah,
All right.
But I'm sure they've got some.
Now, that's fine. Let me just untangle you. Thank you. Yes. Have a stretch. We're just, Daphne, just leave it to cool down. Okay.
Rolling. Right. Now, where are your good questions that you wanted to ask? Let's have those.
Yes. Now were going to ask me something before, so can you ask me now?
Like to get there, do you, like say you go on a plane, can you get like a national plane?
Go there by plane?
Yeah, no, can you go there by like Qantas or
No. No, you can't. But I've been to the Antarctic quite a few times by plane from South America. But I also spent 10 days at the South Pole with the Americans. We flew there. They have a huge base. And you know, the thing that staggered me was that, you see, everything has to be flown in. They had steaks that were this big. And they had 13 kinds of ice cream at the South Pole.